Greetings, Greg here again with another video helping you become a game developer in record time. In this lecture, we're going to begin by building upon what we've already kind of been doing. I want to remind everyone, please click like, please subscribe like always, and check down below because this is not the course yet. This is actually me building the course, and I have a special offer below where you can pre-purchase this course and get it at a substantial discount. So this is a little bit different approach than I'm using before. It used to be that I would just build this course in a vacuum, not share it with anybody as I'm building it, and then of course I'd release the course and show it to people. This time I've done some walkthroughs and I'm building a book with it, and so we're going to be following a little bit more structured path, but this gives you an opportunity to kind of see behind the scenes of how these courses do get created. So in this instance, I like to give challenges to people taking my courses so it can get them to do certain things. And you'll notice since the last lecture, we didn't have this hit point thing at the bottom. Notice it starts out at 10 and it goes 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you get the gold. But what changed and what I haven't shown how to do yet is create this text here with the hit points going down. And so that's my challenge to you. I want you to pause the video. I want you to take the time to try and do it. Really do. You know, obviously one tip you can see right on here on the screen is that you're going to need to create a text object to hold it. But we've already wired up the gold, and we changed the value to gold. So with a little bit of logic and maybe some determination if you need it, it should be within your capability to get this to show up on here without my help. If you struggle with that, please, I'm pleading with you, go back and work through the simple parts again and just simply reinforce what you've been learning if you struggled to get this. If it took you more than a couple of minutes, you know, rebuild this game from the ground up until you get it's just like second nature and you just know how this all fits together. Because we're going to be doing a lot of these same things over and over and over again. You need these fundamentals solid. So with that said, we're ready to move on to the next section here where we are going to create our first scriptable object. Now, in previous courses, I a lot of times didn't use scriptable objects until the very end of the courses. I kind of thought of it as a little bit more advanced. I didn't want to confuse people. But with this game design, I'm taking a little bit of a different approach and trying to build best practices in along the way so we don't end up with a lot of things that need to be refactored. We're going to have to refactor, meaning that we'll have to modify and change and update the code as we go on to handle new requirements. But in this case, we're going to create a scriptable object, which we want to keep the enemy name, the starting hit points for that enemy, and the enemy image. So what we're kind of moving out of our enemy component here, we're moving out things that are part of like an enemy definition, meaning the name of the enemy, the starting points of that enemy, and enemy image, so that we can swap in any enemy profile we like. A scriptable object, it's in my glossary in my book, but a scriptable object is basically a data container that works much like a regular model behavior script, except it's stored as an asset file on your drive and physically on your machine, which means it has persistence and stays around after the game stops running. And so it's perfect for keeping like definitions of things. And so we're going to be using scriptable objects to hold definitions of our heroes. We're going to be using scriptable objects to hold definitions of our enemies. We're going to be using scriptable object to hold definitions of the areas and locations once we integrate those in. And we'll be using scriptable objects for upgrades and so on. So anything where we're holding on to data. So when I say scriptable objects, think data, because that's how I'm building out this pattern. And it doesn't mean that there won't be methods and functionality inside the scriptable object, but it will always be limited to returning or processing data within the scriptable object. It's a very data-centered model when you incorporate these scriptable objects. So we'll come out here in our scripts and we'll create a C# script, and we're going to call this enemy data. And so our enemy data is basically just what it says. It's going to be the data about a given enemy. And now I can come here, you know, to this, now that we've created our scriptable object, and come in here and paste in these things. It looks like it didn't open it. And I'm just going to get rid of these methods for now. And there's our enemy data, just like that. I did name this base hit points instead of max hit points. Why did I name it base hit points? Well, the truth of the matter is the max hit points was probably a better, you know, that's per instance of the enemy. Every enemy is going to have a max hit points, but the enemy's hit points and they are going to scale. So as you go into deeper levels and go further in, you're at level 100, the enemies are not going to have the same hit points as they do when they're at level 1. So that's why I renamed this to base hit points, because it's basically what we're going to be doing is using some kind of calculation based upon what level we're on and how far we have progressed to, you know, add some kind of multiplicative factor to this base hit point. So it'll be much higher in like say level 50 than it would be in level 1. So everything here is pretty much, you know, you can see we're holding a sprite instead of an image. So that changes a little bit. It's not an image component that's sitting on a game object that we're referencing here. We're actually referencing an asset known as a sprite. There is another thing we have to do now. We have to change this to say scriptable object. So scriptable object actually is an inheritance, or it derives its functionality from mono behavior, and it extends it with the ability to have persistence and some of these other things. So we can do some of the same things. One of the things to know is that there is no start and there is no update once you make something scriptable. A scriptable object exists in the project, and it only gets its functionality through other game objects, which we'll see here. So how do we get this enemy data into our enemy? Well, it's much like these other references. We come up here and we say public enemy data. So we're referencing that type that we just created, and we say enemy data, just like that. And this gives us a place to hold it, like so. And then now what I would do is come down here where we say enemy data, and every place where I'm referencing these things, I'm gonna swap out. So obviously we have a bit of an issue here, that we don't have a way to swap out the image because we don't have a reference to it, and we don't really have a, you know, so we need that. So let's go ahead and say public image, and we'll say enemy image. So even though you see the image in the project, we don't have anything in the script here that referenced enemy image, so there would have been no way for us to pull it from the enemy profile. So let's do that first. So because it's really the only object we have on the screen that's visible, that's part of our enemy data. The other two pieces, like enemy name, we don't have a place for it yet, and the base hit points, it could actually be turned into max hit points. We will do that actually right here. So let's do this. When we spawn the enemy, I'm going to use a comment, and I will say get next enemy profile. So I'm putting this in here as almost a precursor. Right now, we're just going to manually set these enemy profiles, but in the future, we're going to have a way to, you know, pick an enemy profile and randomly bring one out. So let's go ahead and spawn this enemy right now is how we would do it. So what we can do is come here to our enemy image, and now we need to reference our enemy data. So we say enemy data dot enemy image. And so you're starting to see hopefully how this dot syntax works a little bit better. That we're always digging into objects. In this case, we're digging into our enemy data. So let me go back and just type a dot there. And you'll notice that the three at the top are the image, the name, and the hit point. So these are directly from the things we've created, as well as all the properties that just come with a particular object, in this case, a sprite. But I can just click enemy image like that. And let's go ahead and say max hit points equals enemy data base hit points. So we're pulling the max hit points now from the enemy data. We're pulling the sprite now from the enemy data. And if we liked, let's go for it and put the enemy name above their head. I'm going to stop the video. I'm not going to stop the video. You're going to pause the video, and try to do it yourself. Try to get the enemy name set up here on the top. You might have to see how I do a few of the other things, but if you're ambitious and you're really wanting to get this, try to figure that out. So I'll show you the process of how I do that. I don't want to have to redo all the formatting, so I duplicate my gold text, move it above here. I want it centered, so I will come down here and click center. I don't want it named gold text 1, obviously, so we change the name of it here to enemy name, which was text. And I always put the type of control at the end so that I can just at a glance know what I'm looking for over here. We want a decent label here that just says enemy name, like that. And we'll make it a little bit bigger. So there's what I did was I created the enemy name text up here, centered it, changed the properties a little. Come down into here. And remember, it's going to be changing every time we spawn an enemy because the names are going to be different. So I'll just say I've got a place to hold the enemy name. So public text mesh pro GUI enemy name. Jump all the way to the bottom. And we're going to say enemy name. And it should be enemy name text, because you want to be consistent like that. Everything seems too small. Enemy name text. So enemy name text dot text equals enemy data dot enemy name, like that. So what we could do is say load enemy data. Load's a bad word. How about set enemy data? Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So remember, I can right click, show context action, create the set enemy data method, and now I can paste this in here. So we're basically breaking it up so that we're kind of restricting this to updating the UI alone. So we've got this and update the UI by creating another method that's all it does. And I can probably just get rid of that comment, because it's pretty obvious now. We're setting the enemy data up. Actually, I'll leave that in. Get next enemy profile from Scriptable object. And I could instead put that over our method, so we know that that's what this does. And this is just the way I'm doing this. I don't expect other people to refactor this way or to build things out this way. But what this is going to let us do is this update UI is kind of handy, because we can call that anywhere now where we're referencing our anywhere where we're referencing our controls, where we're updating them. So when enemy is damaged, we're going to update the UI. We don't need to have all this specific stuff in there from when the enemy's damaged. This is a UI piece. Update UI. So we're basically doing that all the way through, and we can even do it here, even though there's extra stuff that gets run that maybe we don't need. Now, this isn't an update UI piece. I kind of messed that up. That needs to go in spawn enemy. So after we set the enemy data and we got it, then we can reset our current hit points and update the UI from there, and that'll update everything. Another little piece I'm going to put in here. This shouldn't be max. This needs to be current hit points. We also need, when we update our gold, I actually lost the piece where it updates the gold. So I need to say gold text equals gold plus gold. Yeah, so that's what our update UI is going. Anything that we need to keep adding in there. And I also lost our slider calculation. I don't know how I lost all our calculations. I did have a problem with our cut and paste, and so yeah, I messed up. That's why this is not the real course, right? What I did was I pasted over with stuff that was supposed to be part of the spawn. Hit point slider value equals the current hit points divided by the float of the max hit points. Max hit points. Notice this time I just moved the float to this side to show that it doesn't matter which place you put the float, it'll kind of force it into this as well. There we are with my refactoring of this. Let's save it and flip back. And we will check because we have stuff to drop in, I bet. Multiple things. All right, notice here, it wants to know what enemy data we want to use. And if we click, we have none. It's because we've literally created no enemy data yet. We've got this enemy scriptable object, but we don't have really a way to create it. And I can create it by just coming up here and say asset, create asset menu. And that's really all I need to have this be creatable for us. I'm going to come up here, come back, I'll recompile it with that. That's called an attribute, by the way, above a field like that. They call those attributes. And I'm going to come up here under my assets and create. And notice at the very top what I have here, enemy data. I stuck it at the very top, so I'll create enemy data. And I'll call this guy Abner. And let's give him the name Abner, and let's give him 10 hit points. And let's go ahead and pick the sprite. Notice that we can pick him here and set the enemy image. And now let's go back to our enemy again and see what else we have to configure. We don't have the enemy data set up yet. We created him out here. Where did we create him? Created him right here. So let's make a folder to hold our data, first of all, because it's going to get confusing if we don't. So we create a folder to hold our data, and we'll come into our scripts, and we'll drag Abner out of there and put him in the data folder. So he's managed here as data. And we now need to make him the current profile. So I'm going to drag enemy data over, and he's now where they're going to read the enemy data out of this scriptable object, which the data set right here. Let's jump back in again and see we have a couple more. We have to do the image, which is the enemy itself, has the image on it. And then we need the enemy name text, and it is right here. So we drag it on there. Now we should be able to run this thing and see if I made any errors or bugs, which I probably didn't, but it wouldn't be a huge surprise. Notice that we got Abner here. Now, one of the things I would do to test this a little bit, we'll put some exclamation points after Abner here, and let's change the base hit points to 5. We'll have less clicking that way. And we'll click. And notice now when it loads this enemy, it says 5 hit points, and we got Abner there. And if I go to 1 hit point left, watch what happens if I change this to 10 now, and I take these off like that and click. It's rereading this, which is important because we're going to be creating other scriptable objects. And as I was grabbing that image, I realized we never got Abner moved home into his image folder. And so you'll see here that I have this guy who we're going to call Renab. Rimba. That's what he is. His name is Rimba. So it's just basically Abner spelled backwards. He's going to be Rimba. Rimba and Abner. And so that's just the image for him. Let's come to the data folder, right click, create enemy data. And he's going to be Rimba, named there. Now, I just realized we kind of have redundant data here. I'm typing this twice. Let's fix that real quick. We get that off of there. We don't need it there. And so that's going to break this, and we just need to say name now. And so what it'll do then is read the name off of here. And we probably want to do that, because why make ourselves just enter data twice? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So now with Rimba, let's make him a little stronger, make him 20, pick the image, Rimba, and let's run again. And now what's interesting is we really don't have an automated way to split between these, but when I get to 1 hit point here, I can test it by clicking on enemy and finding our enemy data item here, dragging Rimba in. And so see what I'm doing here is when I drag Rimba in, they're now the enemy data for the next click. And there he is at 20 hit points. I click him 20 times. If I don't change him out, I'll have to click 20 times again, which I don't want. So I'm going to click over here on Abner, change his base hit points to 3 because I'm getting lazy at clicking. Go back to enemy and swap in this data. So we'll go here and swap in Abner. So we'll get him next time when I click. Notice he only has 3 hit points. He'll always only have 3 hit points. 1, 2, 3 every time. And if I swap back in Rimba, when this guy dies, then his profile gets put up. So you can see how we've really set ourselves up in a smart way, I believe. So in the next video, we'll be able to actually randomly spawn an enemy and put them in there rather than, manually swapping them out. So like always, please like and subscribe. Make sure to check back. If you look down below, you're going to see links to my courses. All my courses, I have a dozen already released. This will be my 13th course. Hopefully it'll be the lucky 13. And it is going to be, I think, a lot better design, because like I said, this is not the real course. This is the building of the course to make sure everything is solid and there's a good progression in how it's built. I'm giving a peek behind the scenes to that up through, a reasonable part of this game. And then at some point, obviously there's a purpose here that I do want to bring attention to the fact that I do have 12 game courses. I'm giving them all away for free, all of them away for free with the purchase of this My First Idle Game. And that's for a limited time. As soon as I start putting the polish on the course, expected to be released in January, then I'm not going to be no longer creating these videos on YouTube showing how they're made, and I'll have the course at full price at that point. So thanks for watching. I really hope you're enjoying the series before and are learning a lot about how to create video games, and not just create video games or build video games, but creating the kind of games and creating them in a way that can really fast track you to becoming a professional game developer, maybe getting out your own first game on Steam or itch.io, something like that. Might be a little easier, but idle games are great. In the first video I talk about why you might want to choose idle games for your first game that you might actually create and put out there for people to play. So, with that said, I'm done, and in the next lecture, we're going to update our enemy spawner so it actually can randomly pick enemies.